Rohit Malrani, one of the co-founders here with Office Hours. I used to be Battery Ventures Growth Equity, went over to an early stage startup, Source Scrub. That's how Joe and I interacted years ago. At this point, I feel like Source Scrub on my LinkedIn almost says like 7 years since when I joined, which is just like crazy to think like how fast time honestly moves. But then since then, started Office Hours. We focus majority on a lot of preparation for individuals breaking into the buy side. Harry and our team connected through that interaction, helped Harry eventually place over to Periscope. Periscope, phenomenal individuals. Not just saying that, really. I mean, Joe and I have connected in person, but of course, at the end of the day, I'm not going to say Chicago and Midwest is nicer than New York, but I'm also not saying that. But I think at its core, when it comes down to it, like everyone works a lot generally in many careers. The people that you work a ton with, I think really matters. So that's kind of like one point that I'll like really bring up is like the people and the culture is something that has like permeated and something that honestly like I've even seen myself being outside of the organization. So really honored to connect with you guys today, and I'll leave it to you guys to introduce yourselves.
Yeah, for sure. No, appreciate that introduction. Yeah, it's been great. I mean, we've been close to both you guys through this founding journey, and Source Scrub, one of the deals that got away, right? There's always plenty of those in your private equity career. Hopefully, we won't miss out on this one day. We'll see. I think so. Maybe just a little bit of context on me. So vice president at Periscope. I've been here working with the team for about 4 years now since getting my MBA at Chicago Booth. Previously worked in private equity at a firm called SFW in New York. That's where we met. Focused on scientific instruments and software businesses. And before that was in consulting at EY. Awesome. So a little bit of a non-traditional path. And I usually get questions on that too at some point.
Yeah, I can hop in. So Harry Waddoups, I'm an associate with the firm. As Rohit mentioned, I've been here for about a year and was originally connected to Joe through the Office Hours platform and a similar search to what, kind of going through today. I'm originally from Salt Lake City. Midwesterners don't claim me as being from the Midwest, but I'm trying to make that push here as the outsider at the firm. But I went to BYU for undergrad, spent 2 years in the technology and services investment banking group with Raymond James out in LA, and then made the push to Chicago to join the Periscope team about a year ago. So work closely with Joe on all of our, new deals across business services and healthcare services, as well as work closely together on 2 of our active portfolio companies. So we spend a lot of time together and work collaboratively a lot, but we have a small team here. So it's a good culture and we enjoy it.
Yeah, I think, Harry's definitely being modest. He's an excellent associate. We've done a lot in a year. We've looked at new platforms together. We work on 2 of our platforms from a portfolio management perspective together, Percipio Consulting and Uprise Health. One's a little bit newer, one's a little bit more mature. The one that's a little bit newer, Percipio, we closed an add-on this spring together. So it was kind of first time to ring the bell for Harry, and we were hoping to close one this morning. It looks like it's pushed into next week, which can happen. That's another good private equity experience. But he's in the hunt for a new platform with a different VP at the moment. So a lot of good stuff to cover there at the right time too.
That's awesome. No, I think Joe, honestly, kind of like the first point there is right with prior experience with SFW, and honestly GLG for many of the individuals I may know or may not know, large asset, right? And then of course SFW got involved there, and I would argue it would be like one of the best performing assets, kind of like charging on that like customer call basis. And we kind of took a little bit from their playbook. But I think what's awesome is that honestly, the real takeaway ends up being the experience that you get from different firms, carrying that forward. Careers really end up being kind of this like lifelong journey is kind of what we really abide by at Office Hours, where it's like, look, like you may be doing one thing today, and I'm sure Harry on your end, right? Like the banking experience, bringing that to where we are today, looking at it from the other side of the table, being like, okay, like now it makes sense, like what I did even like a couple of years ago, why they thought like that. So just the fact that like years on years really compound.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I'll use that experience also to differentiate Periscope, and we can dive a little bit deeper into that. But look, yeah, as an associate, I saw a deal that had 100 million EBITDA, and I saw 2 deals that had 3 million in EBITDA. And I really like the latter a lot. And I'm happy to dive into that. GLG is a giant company, and it was a great investment for that firm, but it was at a completely different scale. And that made the deal different. It made the ongoing portfolio management of it different. It made the investment thesis different. And it frankly didn't resonate as much with me at that time in my career. And I don't think it still doesn't. I really like the lower middle market, and I really like those smaller deals. One of them was Daysmart Software. It's traded PE firms, I think 3 or 4 times since then. I loved seeing it at that initial stage where we were working with the founders, and we were the first institutional capital in. And that's a big part of Periscope's strategy. And it was kind of a big part of my personal kind of career DNA that led me here.
Huge. That's awesome. Harry, I mean, on that note, mind me asking, and just getting a little bit more insight on your end, Periscope, what attracted you to the opportunity? Has it been different, kind of like what you expected private equity would be when you first started, when you were in banking, thinking back a year ago, and like a year has flown by, right? I mean, technically, like it's flown by for us. I'm sure it's flown by on your end, but like the amount of experience and the knowledge that you acquire and just kind of like the little reps, right? Like I even remember like clean shaven Rohit walked into Battery's office. Like I literally didn't even know what direction up was. Like I'm not even kidding. I didn't know anything negative. And I still argue, I probably still don't know much, but to be fair, it's like, wow, like 5 years of experience brings so much knowledge, especially when you're doing it in a very fast-paced environment.
Yeah, no, and I think it's been a busy year. I think three things kind of stick out to me, and I would one start by just echoing what Joe said. I think one of the things I kind of realized in my banking career was that I also enjoyed kind of the size of deals that we worked on. And I think for me, it really comes down to, I feel like working with founders, working with the stages of companies that we work with, we're able to add a lot of tangible value and with the companies that they are. And I think, transform them, professionalize them. Hopefully when we're done, the companies look a lot different than when we started. And I think that was something for me that was unique and something that maybe I didn't realize fully going into how much time and effort we spend kind of on what we call, our value creation plans or our value creation priorities. And I think not only is that with our current portfolio companies, but also Joe mentioned working on, another platform deal here. Every platform deal that we do, a key part of our diligence, a key part of our investment thesis is creating that value creation plan of, how can we transform and grow this company? And that was something that I think really stood out to me and was something that, I wanted to be working on every single day. And then the other thing that I would say, just why Periscope, I think came from out on the West Coast banking crew. We were one of the smaller offices when I was at Raymond James. And I think I really enjoyed being a part of a pretty tight knit, close group. And that was important for me. And so something that, I found at Periscope was not only a fantastic team that I felt like I could learn from and grow my career, but a place where, I could take on a lot of responsibility. I could add value. I could work closely with, not only senior partners of our firm, but our senior leaders at our portfolio companies. And then Rohit, I think you mentioned at the beginning, enjoy. We're working a lot. We're doing a lot of things. So being able to enjoy the time that you're spending with the people, it was huge for me. And so those were really my big why Periscope.
Amazing. I think what makes it more interesting, and now that we've been on this side, helping individuals kind of place to the larger, the Apollo, Blackstone, Carlyles of the world, the mega funds, smaller firms, mid-market, kind of all the way down to first-time funds even. And we're talking like individuals that just graduated business school, starting a search fund, and people are going there. So a couple different angles, right? And I think what's really interesting is kind of that perspective of multiple roles within a role. If you're on a larger team at $1 billion plus fund and you're one of 10 associates, you're probably only going to be really focused within the specific lane to a certain degree. What we had discussed earlier, Joe and Harry, was around multiple opportunities and basically like, I think flexing that investor mindset as it comes, maybe at like a mega fund at the associate level, you might be doing more like call it the financial engineering, then you might get to sourcing later as like a principal or partner. Tell us a little bit more how wholesome this role looks like at Periscope.
Yeah, no, it is wholesome. No, I'd say it's maybe holistic. It's a broader skill set that you get to build. What Harry mentioned with because of the lean teams, like when we get busy, it is an all hands on deck mentality, and that pushes people into areas that might not be as comfortable, where they're operating with autonomy to cover responsibilities that aren't really defined by title or level. And I'm happy to give a few examples of those, but it comes on the portfolio side. I think this year, because of the way that interest rates have risen, right, it's put constraints on investment ability across the portfolio. And this is true across the market, but leading like budgeting exercises or capital allocation exercises. Look, when we only have so many people and so many portfolio companies, you can have to kind of go man-to-man defense for a little bit. And I know that Harry ended up on a lot of calls with our directors of FP&A, our CFOs, and helping them think through how to model trade-offs and how to articulate them to the board. On a new deal basis, what he mentioned on the value creation side, like, yeah, you'd love to have we have an ops team internally with 2 people Like you'd love to have them lead that, but frankly, they have their hands full too.
Yeah.
And we all need to have a little bit of that skill in our back pocket, because if you're on the investment team for a platform, you're kind of the ones who are going to ultimately have to develop that timeline. And you're going to be the ones held accountable for its delivery. So, if you're going to say that, okay, we're going to save 10% of labor costs through, opening a nearshore office, you better have an idea of how that's actually going to work over the first 6 months. And it looks great on a PowerPoint and in an Excel model, but without at least half a plan of how that's going to work in reality, it's really hard to underwrite. And Harry's touched all that stuff. It's been a part of my career. It's an essential part of the lower middle market. And for a fund like Periscope that does get very involved, at this growth stage, of corporate development and partnering with founders.
No, phenomenal. I mean, I think that makes total sense. I would argue, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's almost as if at a smaller, more focused fund, an associate will be functioning as a VP. VPs are functioning more as principals, partners, general partners, what have you. But I do remember even working at Battery within that mid-market space, analysts were effectively doing the associate work. It was the sourcing, it was the financial engineering, it was like hey, listen, like you're going to be even like traveling as an analyst. And they called us investment professionals because the whole concept was like, okay, like hopefully we won't get too like deterred in meetings with partners or when CEOs are like, oh, I don't want to talk to an analyst. But the idea is that like if you're building your own schedule, if you're traveling, if you're sourcing, if you're also meeting and running with processes and calling on add-ons, I would argue, I mean, that's generally like a pretty kind of like holistic role that you mentioned, but you're also functioning at that next level within that current role.
No, I definitely think that's true. I mean, look, it's not that the typical associate responsibilities go away, but when you're part of an entrepreneurial firm that is growing and we're trying to move quickly and add more platforms and so that we can kind of keep growing our fund and continue to get bigger, that's not a necessity. Like it really is. And we try to, and this gets to our culture a little bit, but we try to have a culture where people feel comfortable taking those risks of playing up. Look, it's not that I don't want Harry to own and crush the model. That's only one piece of the puzzle. And whereas that might be an entire job of an associate is in the model all day at a bigger fund, we frankly have too much more to do and a much smaller team. And the banking resources that we work with aren't going to have huge analyst teams that support us. And the management teams at our portfolio companies aren't going to be as big or as sophisticated. So, we end up probably taking a little bit more of that bandwidth during all M&A activities and during the ongoing management. And because of that, you just play a bigger role. It's part of the fun part though, too, because that autonomy, look, it tests you as a professional, but it's really rewarding. And it keeps the job very stimulating.
Awesome.
And Joe, or Rhodes, I would just add to Joe's last point, I think coming from the associate, that's my favorite part of the job and of the role as well. And I think one of the things that is important as you're thinking about where you want to spend your time and how you want to kind of develop your career is not only do you feel like you're, okay, I'm learning how to become the best associate, but I'm also learning how to become a VP so that one day I can do Joe's job, right? And so like that opportunity, I think, is unique and I think is an opportunity that really allows you to kind of grow into where you hope you want to be in the next few years.
Awesome. Was the associate role, I guess before you came in, what you expected versus what it is today? Pros, cons, anything of the sort, as much as you can speak about it, Harry?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. And, I've spent some time trying to like articulate exactly how I feel. I think that everyone comes in thinking that, okay, the deal execution, doing the deals, that's going to be the majority of the job. And don't get me wrong, it is. But I think that what was new to me was getting exposure to the portfolio operations, supporting our portfolio companies, working with them kind of collaboratively. That's not something that I had exposure to in banking. And so that was all new and it has a learning curve that comes with it. And I think the other thing that we've talked a little bit about this is part of being in a smaller fund and having more responsibilities. When you're coming from banking, you really have to take ownership of kind of your work streams and owning your own deliverables. That was something that was unique at first, and you have to be able to, and we can kind of get into kind of what I think makes a great associate. But one of the hardest things is how can I manage all my multiple deals, my multiple processes? How can I be able to speak and articulate each of them while they're all ongoing, which was something that was new. And I think that really just comes with, becoming a greater professional, managing your own work streams. And I think that was, that's a pretty steep learning curve. And it was different coming from banking analyst where everything's very structured, hierarchical, to more of an environment where you're taking on more responsibilities.
Nice. Sorry, Joe, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was So I saw the question come in from the audience. I think it's a great, right? I think it's like, okay, how do I go beyond the typical associate role? And I remember having this conversation with Harry really early on. Like this might have been even during onboarding. I was like, look, the classic associate role is pretty much put on paper in front of you. And I think everyone has a really good understanding of it. And it's like, let's see how fast you can just crush that 100%, and then we'll move on. And once by working together with him closely, we get to a stage, and maybe that's on the first deal, right? Maybe it takes a deal to really build that level of comfort, where it's like, okay, I know Harry is going to crush the operating model, 3-statement merger model, no question. IC memo, like he can pretty much draft it all. I'll do a proofread. Like if that's the classic associate responsibilities, great. What else can he start to work on? Maybe he'll run HR diligence and benefits and insurance. Maybe he'll handle the net working capital negotiation, and maybe he'll handle like the post-closing, all the accounting work streams that happen. It's that incremental additional responsibilities that happen, usually tied to like your first deal, your second deal, your third deal, but there's an equivalent on the portfolio side too. Mm-hmm. Once you can effectively, proofread the CFO's monthly financials, it's like, all right, we can move on to interpreting MD&A and asking questions at a board meeting. Mm-hmm. And it's look, we can get very specific in how that actually materialized, but Harry is one of those associates that jumps out to me as like, he came up the curve super fast, but he did it by crushing the small stuff really quickly. And it's like the stuff that seems like it's a little bit more mundane, like drafting 3 bullets after a portfolio company's monthly financials come out. Mm-hmm. But once you do that rock solid, it's like, I know you got it. It's automatic. We have the rhythm. Let's move on to cooler and more interesting stuff. Yeah. Because everything he takes on that hill, it gives me more bandwidth, right, to move up to. And we're rowing in the same direction.
Yeah. I think little things like that, honestly, kind of exactly what you mentioned. That's why this morning when I knew that, like, frankly, our catch-up call was coming, I was like, okay, like what specifically? Because back in the day, right, like you have like, not necessarily like a VP breathing down your throat, but like a VP being like, hey, look, like just proactive, right? What are we going to do tomorrow? What are we thinking about? What can you put out there where it's like, hey, look, like I'm already thinking about this, right? I'm already preparing for this in my mind. So in my mind, sometimes I'm just like, okay, like do what you can to, and I remember one of my first bosses had this analogy. They were like, look, real quick, like you're at a buffet and all of a sudden, like your boss above you is eating a certain amount of food on this plate. Whatever falls off that boss's plate comes onto yours. You're not going to go stand in line at a buffet if you already have a full plate, right? But at the same time, like, you have to eat what you get. It's like kind of one of those buffets where you pay for the remainder, right? So there's no waste. So it's really just thinking through like managing up responsibility. I think owning the small things is like a really, really big part of it. And to be fair, like now that I've been working with my father a little bit in a couple different capacities, like it just, I mean, the learning curve never ends, I feel like, to a certain degree, because it's like, okay, before I was answering to one person, now all of a sudden we're answering to like a team of people. Now we're answering to like multiple teams of individuals, but hopefully you get some help along the way, which I think like really adds more value. And I think that honestly ends up being kind of like the main angle of teammate, right? Mm-hmm. Because finding this next hire, whether it be 1, whether it be 2 for like the winter, summer coordinates, can we discuss a little bit more what some of the teamwork looks like and some of maybe like cultural bonding events in Chicago, anything of the sort? Just take a step back.
Yeah, for sure. I think our team culture, maybe I'll handle it in 2 capacities. Within the investment team, what a deal team looks like. And then I think we should talk more broadly about Periscope as a firm. I think the investment team, we typically run 3-person investment team: partner, principal, VP, associate. And that's true for all deals and for managing kind of the platforms. Usually there's a second partner or principal that is there from a QA perspective and at board meetings, but for the most part, it's a 3-person team. While in my role as a VP, I'm kind of like a project manager, right? I'm going to be the one, I'll set a timeline. I'll make sure the partner or principal is focused on the right tasks, and I'll make sure the associate's focused on the right tasks, but then I'm going to flex either direction as I can, really, to keep deal momentum or portfolio objectives getting accomplished. Harry, I'd love to, do you want to jump in maybe on like how that corresponds to your involvement at the deal team level?
Yeah, so I think, we've talked a lot about just like taking on a lot of responsibilities. And I think that part of kind of the platform deal process is really where like Joe and I work really collaboratively, where we'll set our investment thesis, we'll set our diligence priorities or what we want to learn. And then we work on our timeline together. And I think it's going through and executing, figuring out who has bandwidth, how are we going to manage this, and kind of collectively working towards the same goal, I think is where we really kind of, in a 3-person deal team, where I think Joe mentioned it earlier, where we'll get busy and it's kind of all hands on deck. But that's also the fun part of it too, working through all those deliverables and kind of crafting it, being a part of crafting all those priorities together is one of the best parts.
To cover the firm side, I think, so we have a lot of 3-person deal teams. They're not verticalized at Periscope. We don't structure it in any other way. So the 3-person team team that you're on for one portfolio company won't be true to the next.
Okay.
Like the two platforms Harry and I work on together report into different partners, principals, and the new deal team that he's working on right now, right, is a different VP. So we do mix it up, and that's on purpose, right? We want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to work with different management styles or work on different areas of their styles of investing, although they're true to the Periscope model. As a firm, I've mentioned entrepreneurial culture. I've mentioned that we're focused on growth and getting bigger. We're also a pretty deep culture of continuous improvement. I think that's probably one of our core values. We actually recently, like 2 weeks ago, had a meeting about what our core values are as a firm. And that's something like I've never heard of private equity firms focusing on that stuff. Like, what's our mission statement? What's our core values? Earlier this year, we actually all went to West Point Military Academy for like an executive leadership training. We all had to make our own leadership philosophies. So a big part of Periscope has become like, we are all leaders. So I'm going to share my screen briefly. This was planned as of this morning. Can you guys see it?
You might need to, I can't see it on, oh, just about.
There we go. So this one's my leadership philosophy, and it's like, analytical insight, ingenuity, initiative, like values that I really are important to me and how I work with people. Have my favorite book, The Outsiders, some of my like role models and mentors. You'll see self-improvement, huge thing for Periscope, but everyone at the firm has it. This is Harry's, pulled this one up. Being dependable, collaboration, dedication, optimism. That's a huge Harry attribute. Everyone agreed. So we all personally made these, and because the philosophy of like everyone's a leader, first of all, you lead yourself, right? And I think when we talked, like, if you're going to take on more responsibilities and you're going to be good at time management, like, you do have to lead yourself. You have to make strategic decisions about how you allocate your time. But it's an interesting thing. I mean, so this is our entire firm. We all have a little bit of a different format for how we do it. Here's a little word cloud of things that we value, but it's a little bit of an example of like, we're willing to try different things to foster our culture and to make it unique. And part of that is a lot of like focus on our personal development, our leadership capabilities, because we're like, if we're going to scale, we're going to have to build up our own talent.
Of course. And you see the team, of course, growing as the firm gets larger.
Absolutely. And I think, while I don't think our investment focus today is on, probably companies at entry that are sub 10 million EBITDA.
Okay.
I don't think that's going to change materially. But if you look at our fund one, we're on fund two now, we've stayed super concentrated. So fund one had 5 investments. Okay. Fund two will have like 6 or 7. I think that number will push to more of a like, it'll be 8, then it might be 10. And I'll give a little bit of maybe our investment style and approach. I saw a question on that too. We focus on founder-owned businesses. So we're the first institutional capital in. We focus on tech-enabled business services and tech-enabled healthcare services. So what that means to us is it's gonna look and feel like a recurring professional service, but it's gonna have a technology edge. Mm-hmm. And whether that's a product that's commercialized or an internal tool, if it accelerates growth in a traditional services market, or it provides operating leverage against your competitor and allows you to enhance margins scale, that's the technology that we're looking for. And in addition to that, we're always looking for M&A. Like I think we have one portfolio company that hasn't done an add-on yet. But for the most part, we're doing 3 to 5 add-ons per portfolio company.
Awesome.
So like that'll always be part of the story. So it's better be a big fragmented market if it's going to make an ideal Periscope investment.
Yep. Honestly, I kind of love and I'd be curious to get the thoughts on this. And we're getting a ridiculous amount of questions, but we'll do our best to answer as many as we can here. Selling to other private equity firms or financial sponsors, right? Kind of like upmarket, because it always comes in my mind comes down to, okay, you raise like maybe like $1 billion, couple $1 billion. And obviously I'm just saying this like easier than it sounds, but we do hear about these news stories that come out maybe in the last year, 2 years for sure, where it's like, okay, bigger and call it badder funds to a certain degree. The idea is, who are you exiting to a certain degree when a Thoma Bravo or a Vista Equity is getting involved in so many assets? To be fair, it ends up being financial sponsor to another financial sponsor trading. And to be fair, there are only Fortune 500, Fortune 100, only so many large entities out there that can actually have enough cash and means to acquire this asset. Whereas I would argue when you're a slightly more boutiquier firm, investing in businesses, and then of course, kind of tucking in these add-ons, building out this platform, the world opens up. And the world opens up competitive processes on the other side of the house when you can actually sell it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a different philosophy than most people appreciate in the world of private equity. But in many ways, our product is building a private equity platform for bigger funds.
Yeah.
And that comes with we're taking something that's founder owned, has never had institutional capital. We're building a management team, around that founder, or if the founder, moves to a board role, that we go either way. We're building capacity to manage leverage by a professional finance team. And we're building the, kind of the integration plan for them to repeat M&A. And so like one of our, best outcomes to date has been Power Digital. We sold that business last March. It's a, performance marketing company. We exited to Court Square. But it had a fully built ELT, around the founder, Grayson LaFrenz, and it had accomplished 4 M&A opportunities, fully integrated. Awesome. Like what they saw was something that was plug and play. They could put a lot more fuel on it and scale it, multiples bigger. But we spent a lot of time on the building blocks and the infrastructure and proving that the thesis, was valuable. And I think that's, that's a little bit of a different private equity career.
100%. Is there in a capacity like that, like Harry, like how often are you sourcing stuff like that? Is it more on the add-on side of things? What might that look like?
Yeah, sourcing definitely more on the add-on side of things. I think, an underrated part of the job, and maybe this is getting into, more of what we were talking about, stepping up is, keeping your network intact, trying to keep, talking to the people that that you've worked with in the past. And, private equity is a big, network driven business, but I think, really where my role comes in sourcing is mostly on the add-on side, and mostly, we do work with a lot of, buy-side advisors as well. And so, really kind of teaming up with them and coming up with, these are the specific things that we want to look at. And, in some cases, we're very, very specific. We know the market might not be, large, or maybe it is large, but we want to be very, targeted and specific. And so a lot of it is coming down to, creating that plan with those different parties that we like to work with, and, really trying to find, I guess what we would consider the diamond in the rough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like we're never doing like cold calling. I know we're not that type of shop, but if we hire a buy-side advisor that's going to do the cold calling for us, they may come to us with like 50 deals.
Yeah.
And I think, we have to have a framework. We have to have criteria, and it's like, we're not going to have time to read about every single one and, digest the website. So how do we sort them and prioritize them? And it might be by scale, it might be by geography, but, the markets that a lot of our platforms play in are so fragmented that sometimes that can be really hard to wade through. So I'd say that's how we really get engaged on sourcing, is like, how do we rank them A, B, C, and pick which ones to really spend our time on.
And one thing that I would add that I actually think is maybe a unique or an underrated element of the sourcing is maybe we're not doing that cold calling, but oftentimes Joe, or a combination of Joe and I, we will be, kind of the first initial contact to a lot of the founders that we're looking at. And it's actually surprising how great of a strength that is as we're going through the deal process. When, the founder, he's built a business, he's looking to do, kind of, a life-changing, career-changing event, and he feels like he has a strong relationship with Joe, who can be kind of his middleman between, maybe some of the more senior partners at our firm, or whether it's the management team at our portfolio company. And so, that I think is is a skill that you might not think of, but being able to kind of develop those relationships with those targets is really important.
100%. I'm trying to think. It was a Harvard Business School like PE conference. I'm not sure if it was like Mark Rowan or one of the heads of Apollo, was effectively like, look, like we don't need technically individuals to come in and do the math, right? Do the Excel work. We have people to do that. Who's going to come out to meet with the CEO in Indiana and go fly fishing for an entire day and pretend like you like it type of situation? That was like the whole, like basically core concept around like, can you bond with people that don't live in like some like New York or Chicago high rise and don't do what you do on the weekends, right? Because at the end of the day, like business services and finding these assets. I remember we went to Omaha one time to look at businesses, and a lot of people were like, oh, like what software is in Omaha? But like there's a lot, and there really are like so many businesses all over the States. So from that perspective, it's really having that differentiated angle to connect with individuals that I think carries weight. But what I really, really like about Periscope that you're mentioning right now, personally ends up being kind of like the resources of a larger firm, right? That like consulting oriented, like value added team. Joe, how is that different from, honestly, you bring, of course, and we've got a couple questions here on like differentiated background. Do you only hire from banking, MBAs, non-MBAs? You bring a variety of experience to the table. I know we spoke about this last webinar a little bit too, and I'll share that link shortly if anyone wants to listen in. But can you tell us a little bit more about how that makes you a better investor today, coming in from, frankly, various firms' experiences?
Yeah, for sure. I think the breadth of experience definitely helps. And that's because it matches up well with the broad skill set, right, that's needed in this part of the market. Like, don't get me wrong, 9 times out of 10, I think banking is the best experience you can have, because that modeling part that we talked about, and said, yeah, it's part of the job, but you have to crush it. You have to crush it. And I think bankers who have worked on bigger, more complex deals, who know how to put a merger model together in their sleep, and understand the 3 statements, they're going to be able to move on from that stage of the associate path so much quicker. And that was something I struggled with personally coming from consulting. And it's not that we're, look, there's better resources out there today, OfficeHours included, that can help get you past that stage. But hopefully, once you get past that stage, that's where the other skill sets really become valuable. And whether that was a PE ops role or a consulting role, or heck, I've seen such a variety of pre-MBA experiences, find themselves valuable in PE later on. You just have to find the right way to apply them. Is really the mission. So that's what I would add. Yeah, I was thinking back to that other webinar that we did, but yeah, like, I love the consulting skill set, especially when you think of like the LEK, Parthenon, Bain, commercial due diligence playbook, like super, super valuable. And if you can find a way to crush the accounting along the way and the modeling along the way, like, you really have you're a double threat. And it benefits you as you move up into layers of additional responsibility.
100%. And then Harry, you could speak, of course, if you don't mind me asking, the banking background, right? And kind of like the differentiated, and part of it is, of course, like what you expected the associate role to look like, how it might differentiate, how I thought about it. And I only did like banking for like a very little bit, but it's just every thought process ends up being deeper, right? Everything that you kind of like think about, whether it be like little triggers. I mean, I actually didn't even learn as much. So growth equity. But to be fair, I remember when I would connect with CEOs and it was like, hey, like, take on like a bag of capital from us, like $25 million, go about acquiring that long tail, drive money into S&M. And we were like, oh, like retention isn't super high, hire more customer success managers. When I got to the operating side, I was like, wait. We like, it's not as easy as hiring and firing and like throwing more people at it. The leaky bucket is a real leaky bucket, right? Give us an understanding of like what it is on a day-to-day. Like, is it more like maybe like instilling like a Pendo, like product automation tool when it comes to, do people know what they're looking at when they log in? Is it that we're not like calling on customers as much? Is it that they pay and then they don't use it? How long does it take? Like, there's so many intricacies that come in. And this is what I learned only on the operating side when it came to like really, really diving deep. But of course, we'll have to learn kind of from the banking to the PE.
Yeah, so I think I put it in 2 buckets. So I would start by saying, one was just, Joe mentioned, just like developing those technical skills that you're then able to apply, when you start the associate. And I think the one jump or the one difference that you have to make, especially at a smaller firm, is, you're owning everything. You're building in your systems and your processes to review your work and check your work and, make sure that you're doing it correctly, but then being thoughtful about it, right? Like, I think, in banking, it was very much a templatized, like, this is the data we want to show in the sim, this is the data we want to share, versus when you're doing diligence, it's thinking about, what are those value added analyses that we can put together that might be completely different than the last deal we just did. And so it's a lot more of that kind of critical thinking of, what are those real maybe 2 to 3 business problems or value drivers that we're trying to dig into, and then how can we support that with the data. And so that would be the first thing. And then the second thing that I feel like I really was able to leverage and take with me from banking was kind of those softer communication skills. I think that an underrated element was, we've talked a lot about, building relationships, but, leading calls, working with other PE firms and seeing how they operate just in diligence. doing sim drafting sessions with management team members, or kind of working and developing those just kind of professional communication skills, I think come a long way and allow you to kind of communicate with all the other parties that you're now working with on the other side. And I think one thing that is unique about Periscope is associates are asked to contribute a lot in staff meetings, investment committee meetings, et cetera. And so one of the things that's a learning curve is, when you come to staff meeting on Monday mornings and we've been reviewing, new sims and new opportunities, you better have your opinion ready to go on why you think that's an attractive investment opportunity and why not, and be able to defend it. And I think that, developing a skill and being able to clearly articulate your thoughts in a, 2 to 3 minute blurb, that was something that was unique, and that's something that you had to learn. But I think that really helped kind of develop, that I think that helps you develop your investor mindset, but is something that, having a base of communication skills ahead of time, makes that learning curve a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm. How was and because now we're getting more and more questions, and as we discuss kind of like the process kicking off next week for more interviews, how is preparing for the interview itself? You can get into specifics as much as you want, but of course on you.
Yeah, no. So I think, and I'll give the office hours plug as well. I think, I worked with you guys to prepare, and I think that really it came down to two things for me. So number one, doing a little bit of kind of self-reflection and talking, like creating a pros and cons list with you, Rohit, about, okay, what are those firm attributes that are attractive to me, and what kind of PE firm do I want to go work for? And I think that, taking the chance to take a step back and think about what you're interested in and where you want to spend your time in your career, not only do I think that benefits you in your career, but I also think when you're in the interview, you're able to say, this is why I want to come work at Periscope, and here's why. And here's how it aligns to the experience that I've had the last 2 years when I was doing banking. And I think that was a piece where, office hours was able to help me take a step back and look, here's all your options. Here's all the different type of cultures or different investment theses or mandates, et cetera. And then the second thing I think for me was, the mock interviews and being able to kind of interact with the mentors. And I think, coming down to, what are those things on my resume or from my deal experience that, that highlight me and that I can really, show well into an interview. And, kind of trying to think about, okay, I benefit from a time of being in banking where we did a lot of deals. And so how do I distill that down into the most important pieces? And that was really helpful. I think, when it comes to just what makes a great associate, everyone really thinks of, hardworking, attention to detail, the technical skills. And I think those are all valid and are all true that you need to nail. But at the end of the day, some of those like softer skills, being able to actually know what you want and being confident and committed and, and being able to articulate those things, that really kind of sets you apart, and you were able to hit the ground running day one.
100%.
Yeah, I'll echo all that because Harry crushed it. I think when he came to interview with us, and it was clear he was a great fit from day one. And I think that showed the level of preparation that he had. I think especially for anyone on the line that is from a non-traditional background, I had 2 PE associate interviews. Like that was it. You're not going to get a lot of shots, and I think that means you have to prepare to the max. Now, look, bankers, you'll definitely have more. That's just you'll have more shots on goal. But preparation is key, and you better know your accounting definitions backwards and forwards. You better know why you're in the room, and you better convince someone that, look, if you give the shot, this is what you're passionate about, and you're not just coming for a 2-year cup of coffee before you go get your MBA. You are in it as long as you can be, and whether I'm asking you to annotate a data set that's going to take 3 hours and be no fun at all, or I'm asking you to come to a board meeting and help me pick apart a budget or a value creation plan, you're gonna meet that with the same level of enthusiasm and optimism and passion, because you know that it's part of the private equity career.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. No, I mean, I think that makes a ton of sense. I think the biggest thing, and honestly, I like to have this conversation. I'm glad you brought up the pros and cons list. A lot of people are like, oh, who will accept me? Who will accept me, right? Where can I just kind of finagle myself into? But in my mind, it's much more hey, what's actually a fit? right? Who will accept me? Who will I accept? Because in theory, if you go into your first role out of school where it's like, okay, maybe like 2 and out, couple of years and out, maybe there's another one after that, similarly, or you lateral or something of the sort. Finance is pretty accelerated to begin with. But the reality is, if you're going to a buy side shop, and if you know that maybe there's like a potential for an MBA, but also like a potential to come back in your mid 20s, that can arguably be the last interview of your life.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't, like how, that's insane to think about, that you can lock up a role, sorry, like mid 20s, where all of a sudden then like you go there as an associate, go to business school, and they might pay for business school, but they want you to come back as a VP. And sure, then at that point, it's just like a little check the box, like, hey, did you actually go to Booth? Did you actually go to Harvard? And then of course come back as a VP and then partner track.
Yeah, I think, I mean, look, and you'd be surprised. Like I've heard analysts ask me about exit opportunities, and it blows my mind. Like the exit opportunity for me and Harry is we're going to go retire on a beach somewhere. Like this is it. We are here to make as much money as possible and to build Periscope. It's a completely different mindset than when you're looking at banks out of college and you're thinking, okay, where can I get from here? Where can I get from here? It's like, look, if a stop in business school is the right move for you, that's great, but we're still going to want you back. And we're looking for people to commit for the long term. And frankly, in private equity, this happens more as you get more senior, but the compensation model is completely designed that way. And it's like, you have to think, like, where can I work for 10 years? You should ask yourself that question. And it'll come down because that's more my advice for like MBA students and people going into the VP role, but it's absolutely important here too, because that's how long it takes to get paid sometimes for the really big outcomes. And, you need to ask yourself, okay, are there enough growth opportunities for me personally and for the firm, where we can do, we can get bigger, I can manage deals. Like, do I see myself, on the partner track? Also, is it a culture where I feel like I can last that long, or a mandate that resonates with me, where I'm not going to get sick and tired of looking at another, tech-enabled service business in Minneapolis. Like, if you want to do food deals, go do food deals, and you're just going to find yourself frustrated and feel like you have the golden handcuffs on and not want to leave. But you're not going to be your best self, and you're not going to make, the best investments of your career.
Yep. Figure out what you like, pursue. Yeah. That's the overarching thesis of honestly anything we do these days, or it should be. A couple good questions. And I guess it comes down to the market. We see firms hire, slow down, unfortunately lay off on the banking side of the house. What does that look like? How has the market changed, even Joe, since the last year that we had the webinar, Harry, since the last year that you joined?
Look, it's no question that the market is different. Like we're in a high interest rate period, and frankly, I don't think we're exiting it anytime soon. The math for LBOs is harder. I think on the software side, I mean, we've almost kind of walked away from software completely. It's just companies with low liquidity levels are really hard to buy out right now. On the cash flow generative services side, the math still works, especially if it's growing faster than double digits, just to work with round numbers. And that's where we tend to focus historically. So I think, we're leaning into that, kind of full on. I think as I look, look at our vintage for our 2022 or our second fund, and I look at the, maybe these few years of investing, Periscope style should be differentiated. And I think it actually gives us an opportunity to stand out from the crowd a little bit. The vintages that predate, 2020 or 2021, it's like, great. If everyone's making a 20% IRR, it's like, how do you know what funds are actually adding value? But if the stakes are higher and debt costs a lot more, the funds that actually add value to outpace that are really going to stand out from the crowd. And that's what I look forward to, because with multiples rising, it masks a lot of underperforming managers. Look, it makes deals that much harder. And, I like to say, like, day one of banking, you learn that like EBITDA is a proxy for free cash flow. And it's like day one of private equity, you learn that it's not a proxy for cash flow, and we need to go look at what actual cash is. Like we do that constantly at our portfolio companies and evaluating new investments. But but people are learning lessons that we haven't had to focus on for a long time. And it's like, okay, our CapEx budget is no longer unlimited like it has been for the last 3 years. Where do we really want to invest? Or look, historically, we would build the entire executive team within the first 6 months. All right, we can't afford to do that anymore. So which executive role is most important and where should we start? Trade-offs like that are important, but I do think it's going to help the higher performing funds differentiate themselves like Periscope.
Awesome. Harry, did you have any thoughts on that on your end?
No, I think the only thing that I would add from an associate perspective, and it creates a lot of learning opportunities because the level of diligence is just that much more scrutinized. And I think that, I think Joe mentioned this, to do a deal in this environment, it's got to check all the boxes. And so from the associate standpoint, you might not be getting as many shots on goal in terms of, finally closing platform deals in the last year. But I think there are plenty of learning opportunities in, the level of diligence that we're doing to validate whether, we can do the deal or not. I think, when it comes down to it, that's, has been a huge learning experience.
Awesome. We'll leave like the last 5 minutes or so, or a couple minutes to discuss the process and kind of next steps, if you don't mind. Before that, really quickly, this question stood out to me, and I guess that carries weight on ask something that's a bit more like relevant and would stand out. But it seems like there are a couple of secular trends: rising share of digital ad spend, aging population, that are tailwinds to a few of your current and exited portfolio companies, MAS, Centrix, Uprise, etc. Trends in general. We'd love to learn a little bit more. I mean, I think this is like a good interview question, right? Kind of like really like flip it on the team, being like, hey, like, how do you think about this going forward? And like, it kind of plays into that fit, right? It's like, look, like, hopefully I'm a fit for you guys, but hopefully you guys are a fit for me, right? And like kind of assessing macro analysis here, but we'll love to learn more.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say, and I can probably talk a little bit more specifically on the healthcare side of our investing. So we do healthcare tech-enabled services and business tech-enabled services. But we try to have like macro big themes that everyone at the table understands, whether you've ever done a healthcare deal or not. One of those is like aging demographics. That's an easy one. I say that, and everyone on this webinar understands, like, yes, the US is aging. So we try to have, like, in our big areas of thematic investing, we try to have 3 to 5 themes like that. I'd say sentences like that, where it's like, we don't need to go look at any data for all of us to know that that's true. Aging demographics is one of those. Rising labor costs is one of those. Trying to think, like, I'd say workflow automation broadly is one of those. And tapping into those on any investment thesis, it's kind of like an easier win when we're talking about the value creation plan. It's like, of course, this is a good market because it's benefiting from aging demographics. Or, of course, you can have a value creation plan built around margin expansion because these are all manual workflows. And in a 2023 business, like, we should be able to automate some of that.
Yeah.
And so it's having some of those things back pocket that I think the full investment team at Periscope, understands. And they're very, very simple and high level, because private equity is not really a macro game, but we can sprinkle those in. I think VC is more of a macro game where you're like, let's invest behind this, this big trend in 10 different ways. Here it's like, know that the trends are there. We're still going to go super micro and diligence the asset and make sure the competitive positioning and growth opportunities is attractive. But we can throw those big, macro
cherry on top.
And yeah, for sure.
Cool. How can one learn more about Periscope, get involved in the process? What does that look like when it comes to hiring your next couple teammates?
Yeah, for sure. I'd say, so our website's a great resource. There's plenty there. Reach out to both of us for sure. We will resume drop with OfficeHours, and we'll be kicking off kind of the first phase. We'll be with, VPs like myself, both behavioral, but also some technical in there. We get our senior investment professionals involved pretty quickly. They're very sensitive to the culture here at Periscope, and they want to make sure that, early on, we're really evaluating that and filtering it. and then after that, there is a case study, there's a modeling test. Like we do want to make sure you have the tools in place to do the job. But as Harry mentioned, like using those few opportunities you do have to articulate that you've done your homework and you've really thought about the opportunity. And it's like, if you're a candidate, then go to any P fund in the world. Why are you here today? And why Periscope? I mean, that's really the energy and the enthusiasm that we want to see.
Awesome. Harry, any thoughts?
No, I think, yeah, please reach out if there's any questions. I think, if the people on the line haven't already told, Joe and I like to talk about Periscope. We like to talk about what we're doing, and maybe we ramble a little too much, but I think, no, hopefully, yeah, please reach out with any questions. And I think, the process should hopefully be smooth and everyone will enjoy, getting to interact with Joe and our other VPs as well as our senior partners as well.
Cool. Yes. So I will share some additional information thereafter, but if you go to our Office Hours LinkedIn page, you can see respectively right there. It's also within our webinar, call it blog that we got out yesterday. I'll drop that link in right here for anyone that hasn't seen it. We try to do as much marketing and advertising as possible. But yes, I mean, I think if you're going to reach out, definitely kind of have a thoughtful background. Now we have 2 full-on webinars with the team here, not to mention, of course, anything that is out there when it comes to additional resources, the website inclusive. But yes, let me just drop this. I'll send it out after when it comes to the application link. But yeah, thank you so much, guys. I mean, that was like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like hyper quick hour, right? Like very, very smooth in my mind.
Yeah, it flew by. No, excited to meet a bunch of the candidates. Excited to talk more. Really appreciate you moderating this. I think it really helped us. Hopefully, it prevented some of the rambling.
No. All good. Thank you so much for joining, speaking about your experience. Sorry, it seemed like Asif had some technical difficulties and then didn't want to interrupt the flow. But happy that we got through it. This will be available on podcast. We'll make it into short form. I think at a minimum, listen to this one, listen to the other one with Joe highlighted, go through the website. Last point, when I went to Battery, I mean, it was like me against a couple Ivy Leaguers. I'd memorized their battery.com portfolio page. Like literally, like close my eyes, I could just see their scrolling logos because I was just like obsessed. I was like, all right, I got like one opportunity, like a kid like me, like what am I doing on Sand Hill Road in front of like the Rosewood? It was like pretty innately like interesting and just kind of like a moment that I was like dreaming. And then of course, just like capitalize. You literally, if you get like one shot on goal, do whatever you can to make it.
Yeah.
No, for sure. Come with depth. I think a classic faux pas when it's like, what's your favorite portfolio company? And they're like, okay, the most recent one was CyberMax. Cybersecurity is like really important. I think that's going to be a good investment. It's like, all right, come on, bring us something else, bring us something interesting, a perspective, use it to pitch something that you've worked on or experienced in your working career to date, and crush it. Well, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Very excited to meet all of you.
What's your least favorite portfolio company? Should be a question. Bessemer Venture Partners has this anti-portfolio. They discuss why they skipped out on Facebook and a couple other investments and businesses over the last like 10, 20 years. They were like, yeah, we messed up here, but they're like super honest about it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's thinking outside the box. I think we always say that, but it's kind of like really kind of like embodying that. But thank you guys. This was great. Seriously.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thanks for having us. Looking forward to the rest of the process.
Perfect. Look forward to it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rod.
Have a good one.